What is going on, UFC card lovers? Welcome back here to another episode and another UFC card community conversation. And it is my second time with the man himself, the UFC card hobby great, Eric, at the UFC card father, better known on Instagram. Eric, it has been some time, about roughly 6 months since we last had our chat. Obviously, on that first chat, which I will have linked in the description down below for people who want to check out that first chat after this one, we went over the basics about your backstory into the hobby. We talked about your experiences with UFC cards leading up until today. There's been a lot of things happened in between now and then, especially with the new release of Tops, which I want to get your opinion on in a very second. But also, I wanted to make a lot of this conversation about the upcoming Burbank show, you setting up as a dealer, and also your previous experiences setting up as a UFC card dealer. But at that, how are you, Eric?
I'm doing great, and I'm slightly nervous because it's Monday morning where I am, and I have to be on a plane on Wednesday afternoon, and I still have a ton of paperwork to do and finish pricing a lot of cards, a lot of UFC cards that I'm bringing. Probably bringing too much, but it sounds like the show's going to be an outstanding show. It happens to be over a period of time where there's a UFC event just down the road from Ontario, California. This coming Saturday, I think it's UFC 298. Some big fights there. And so I kind of have a feeling like there's going to be a lot of people coming into town that are UFC fans, and they tend to come in town a day or two before the fights. And I'm hoping there's going to be a good amount of those fans that'll go to the card show anyway. And I've talked to a lot of people who are going to be planning to go that are UFC collectors anyway. So I have this feeling like it's going to be a big show. It starts Thursday night with a VIP night, and then it goes Friday, Saturday, and finishes up Sunday, I think around 4:00. It's at the Ontario Convention Center. It's called Burbank because I think Burbank is close by, but should be a powerful show. Something interesting about at least me being at the show is I'm going to team up with another guy that's an OG in the hobby, MMA Cardboard, otherwise known as Luis Zavala, who is probably the world's best collector of rookie one-of-ones, at least from the Topps era. Whenever I lost an eBay auction trying to get a rookie one-of-one, I knew who won it. And whenever he lost one, he knew who won it as well. So he's going to be there Thursday and Friday. We're going to share some space. People are looking for specifics. We're going to be in tables 716 and 717. It's my first show at Burbank. It's considered one of the biggest West Coast shows of the year, probably a top 5 show in the United States in total after you consider nationals. And Chicago's a big show, and Dallas is a big show. But Burbank is going to have around 700 tables, which is massive. And seems like there's going to be all of the grading companies there. And as far as UFC goes, I know what I'm going to bring, and I'm going to bring some serious cards. A lot of them are in my PC. They may stay in my PC because I'm looking for a lot of value out of them. But I'm also doing it to bring some cards people may never have seen before in the flesh. A lot of early one-of-one autos of GOATs. There's going to be some serious Khabib one-of-one autos in there, and some serious Khabib rookie cards, including a rookie plate from 2012 Bloodlines, which someone is going to have to offer me an arm, a leg, a liver transplant, and maybe half a lung, and some cash to add on to that. So I'll see if that leaves my PC or if that's just going to be something people will enjoy seeing. But I've got just a short amount of time left to get it all planned and packed up. But I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to be bringing a lot of great graded cards that are just coming out of PSA. And I also do some vintage baseball, which I know not all UFC collectors have an interest in vintage baseball, but I started collecting 55 years ago, and I have a pretty large collection of vintage baseball. So I'm having a lot of fun with it. Definitely not getting out of the hobby. I'm not looking to sell everything I bring, but it's just something that I'm going to enjoy doing over the next several years, at least, doing shows in the United States as I recently retired. And it's going to be something to keep me active and in connecting with the UFC card community.
Yeah, well, you mentioned a lot of great points there, and specifically referring back to the Burbank show, it sounds like it's a perfect not only combination, obviously you getting together with MMA Cardboard and bringing some maybe some very, very special cards that a lot of people in the community have not had the chance to see in person. And then mix that together with, as you said, timing of the show itself, the size of the show itself. I've heard from other content creators and other people in the community in the hobby who talk about the Burbank show, and it is literally, if not the second biggest show that you guys have nationally over there, it's probably third if you want to, depending how you want to compare it with the Dallas card show. But obviously, it's a very, very big show itself. As I said, you are teaming up with MMA Cardboard, and then also too the timing of the show with the UFC event that is relatively close by as well. So it definitely sounds like it's perfect timing, perfect combination for you to be able to get out there. And as you said, it's for those people maybe who are worried if they are seeing you setting up at shows and maybe advertising about selling some of your cards, it's not that you are at all getting out of the hobby, but if those people who tuned in before, they would know you have a lot of cards and it's not possible to keep and appreciate all of them. So you would be silly to
Right.
not put those cards out and sort of help promote the UFC card community at the same time, which I know you're a big advocate for, which we all appreciate. So very
Yeah,
excited to see.
100%. I am definitely not getting out of the hobby. I'm super excited about what's going on now with Topps coming back into the fold and getting the UFC license back. And so I'm going to probably be more active than I ever was. Um, Definitely jumping right in with Topps Chrome. I think it's going to be a fantastic product. I'm not going to have, I would say, expectations that it was groundbreaking or it's going to be something beyond amazing that we've never seen. The way I look at it is this is Topps' first product in 4 years for UFC. They're going to make some mistakes. They're going to have redemptions. They're going to miscut cards. Fanatics and Topps are not perfect. There's not any clear sign that they're going to be a complete transformation from what Panini was doing. But I think it'll be getting back a little bit more to the basics of what we used to see with Finest and Chrome. And I hope that we'll see a couple more products this year. I'm expecting a pretty good chance that we'll see a museum product this year, maybe a knockout, and maybe a high-end limited print run product from Topps this year. I think they're going to definitely be just as active as Panini was, but I don't think they're going to go down the rabbit hole of zebra prints and 28 different one-of-ones in every product of each fighter. I think they're going to go a little bit more truer to what we used to see from Topps, but we have to see it. You know, a lot of people come out with their opinions, and everyone's got the right to an opinion and the right to express it. None of us are going to be right until we see the product in our hands. And I've ordered a couple cases, I've ordered some boxes, and I'm excited to see them at the end of the month when they hit the market.
Yeah, well, I was obviously just about to ask you about your thoughts on top, so I'm glad you got there
I jumped
before
in.
me. You jumped in. Yeah, as you said, everyone's to answer, everyone's got their opinion, and I myself, just my previous video, I spoke about. I wasn't sure what to expect from Topps, but the designs that I've seen so far, I am not a fan of. I was a little bit probably harsher than I should have been. Obviously, I should be more waiting to see the whole set itself, what inserts do come out, the designs and as a whole, and maybe, as you said, see what it's like in hand as well. But just so far, I myself was a little bit more disappointed, especially some of the inserts that I saw. I just thought they were a little bit too far left from what I was expecting. But I do, as you mentioned, I do believe there will be other sets, as with Museum Finest, which Bloodlines maybe, as you said, Knockout. So I'll be very excited to see those moving forward with Tops and the direction that they take with it. You also, sorry, you also did mention you picked up some cases as well. So that's very exciting. Will they all just obviously be personal rips for yourself?
Yeah, this will just be for me. I think I've mentioned it in the prior talk we had. My old style was to buy cases and boxes, and I would rip it and keep it. And that's how I ended up having nearly 500,000 cards. At $3,000 or $4,000 a case, probably not going to do too many cases. But we'll see how it goes, and always it'll depend on the rookie signers and the rookie cards that are there, and what the chase cards look like. But I'm happy to buy and see it again in the market, and we'll definitely give Tops some time to get the kinks worked out. Like I said, I don't think they're going to come with a product that'll wow every old Tops collector and every recent Panini collector. You're not going to make everybody happy. I think we're going to definitely see some people walk away from UFC card collecting if their only experience was Panini. And I think you're going to see some people that previously had experience with Tops that'll think Chrome isn't what they expected. And then I think you're going to have a group of people that are going to be happy with the product. And you're going to have a group of people that will be happy with pieces of the product, because, you know, MMA is not necessarily a team sport. So we're going to focus on individual fighters. And if someone is expecting to have their great new fighter PC built up with the new Chrome, it may not happen. It may not happen until a later time. Tops may not get every fighter to sign stickers or on-card cards for this issuance. It's going to take them some time to plan things out. But my view is I'm going to keep an open mind, and I'm going to spend some money with these guys. I think it's going to be worthwhile.
Yeah, no, that's a great point that you mentioned about just keeping expectations, especially as you said, UFC being an individual athlete sport. It's easier, at least this is very applicable to my situation too. I can just sit on the sidelines, and if I don't particularly like a particular insert or card of a fighter, I can just wait till the next time. I can just wait till the next release and the next set, and
Sure.
you know, who knows? Maybe I'll be like, oh wow, I really like this design. I really like this card, so they'll pick that one up instead. There's no real need for me to rush in and jump in and be buying boxes just to chase particular fighters, just because my style from the beginning has been to not rip product and buy individual cards on the secondary market. So that's actually a great point that you brought up. And I think that's important for people to remember as well moving forward when it is a company coming back to UFC cards. Thank you for giving your opinion on Tops, but I want to get now back into the Burbank show. Just from my
Sure.
perspective, I'm not familiar at all with really any card shows. So I would love to get just your dealer's perspective as well, but then also just to hear about your previous experience as well, because I know you mentioned this is your first time at Burbank, but I do know that you have been at Dallas before. And if you wanted to maybe talk about your experiences at that show as well, just because that is such a big show.
Sure.
And I know that maybe might have been the first really big show that you've done setting up. So just anything you want to talk about when it comes to setting up at the card shows as a dealer and what you're sort of hoping to get out of this Burbank show as well.
Okay. Well, the first thing I'll say is, if you have a chance to go to a show, absolutely go, because they are a lot of fun. If you're a UFC collector, you might not see a ton of UFC stuff. What you might find is multiple dealers will have a small amount of UFC. I'm a different kind of a dealer, because I will have a ton of UFC. And that makes a difference for a lot of people that are focused on buying UFC. But not all dealers will have or focus entirely or mostly on UFC, with a couple exceptions around the country. I know 3 or 4, maybe 5 guys that do shows that have almost only UFC, but in the shows that they do, they are literally the only 1 or 2 vendors that will have UFC stuff. So I'm hoping that the Burbank show will give me a chance to put a spotlight on UFC, not just for the UFC collectors, but for other collectors that come around and see the stuff that UFC has had from 2009 primarily. I'll have some pre-2009 from other brands through 2020. I'll have a couple Panini cards, but probably not too much. But I would encourage anyone that hasn't been to a card show to go to a local card show, or if you have a chance to get to Dallas, I'll be in Dallas middle of March. And if there's another Burbank show this year, which I think there will be, I expect to go back because I expect this to be a great show. Also have some thoughts about doing a show later this year in Las Vegas. And if all things work out right, I may be doing a show in April in Virginia because it'll coincide with my wife wanting to go to Washington, D.C. to see the cherry blossoms, which we've seen 5 or 6 times, but it never gets old. Anyway, my past experience in Dallas has been, I would say, some part excellent and some part disappointing. And I'll try to explain a little bit of both. It's been excellent in I've had a couple really good sales and made some customers really happy that were in search of specific cards they were searching for. So someone came up to me at my first card show in Dallas, which was last year, I think September of last year, and they were in search of a red ink Conor McGregor auto, and I had one, and they hadn't seen one live in their lives, and it was a father and son. And so I had a big sale. I was super happy with the sale, and that single sale nearly made the entire show. And the other thing that I like to do is when I'm going to have a show, I'll try to pre-plan it and let people know that I'm going. And so if people are planning or can go to the show, that's great. Or if I can find something that they're looking to buy, I bring it to town and then I ship it out to them from there. So that's another thing that it connects me well with a lot of collectors. The only negative thing that's happened in Dallas is the Dallas show is huge. Okay. It's got a main room that's massive and probably has 70% of the dealers. Then it's got a mid-sized room that has about 15% of the dealers. And then it's got 5 or 6 small rooms that have all the rest. And so because I didn't plan it far enough in advance and didn't have any experience with the show, I ended up in one of the smaller rooms. And so I didn't get a lot of foot traffic, which was disappointing. But in the end, when people were looking for UFC and they asked some questions and someone knew that I was there, the collectors came. And a lot of people that are in the same Facebook groups that I'm in also came to see me and knew where I found me in the show. So I'm hoping, and that's the current plan, is that I'll be moving into the main room in Dallas. Okay, so that's like finally getting to Hollywood. If you've been an actor in your local theater, and you finally get to go to Hollywood. So hopefully in March, I'm going to go to Hollywood, or the main room in Dallas, which has so much foot traffic and will give people a chance to see more UFC stuff and a chance to interact with more people. And I'm really hoping that could make a change in not just sales, because that's only part of it. I enjoy the shows a lot. I enjoy meeting people who are collectors and meeting people who I've known over the years through Facebook and Instagram that come to buy something or look at the stuff that I brought. So I think that should happen in the next show. And I'm committed to be at the Dallas shows in March, May, July, September, and November. So I'll be going to Dallas through the rest of the year. And another thing that's important about the shows, because I recommend that people go, is just there's not a ton of etiquette that you need to think about with the shows. But I think what I recommend is, find friendly dealers. Okay. Most of the dealers can be friendly, but you have to realize the dealers might be sitting there Thursday night all day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and they don't get to move a lot. They don't walk away from their stuff, and so they're not always going to be friendly people. Some of these guys that do this are on the road, nearly 12 months out of the year doing shows. But the friendlier you are and the better questions you ask and the interest that you show are going to get good responses from the dealers. Another tip I would say is, and this is kind of, I'm stabbing myself in the throat here, but never pay sticker price. There's always some room to negotiate. Now, there's not 50% room. There may not be 40% room, but there might be 5 to 15% room. Because most of these dealers are not going to go out and pay sales tax. They don't have to pay eBay fees. If you're paying by PayPal, it's friends and family because you're handing a card to somebody. They take zero risk, it getting lost in the mail or not being what they wanted or getting dinged up, etc. So there's a lot of costs that they don't incur. On the other side, we do pay for the tables that we use. A lot of people will travel, and so for me, I've got hotel, car, and a plane flight to cover my costs, but I'm happy to do it because I enjoy it as much as I'm looking for a profit. So I think there's definitely some bargaining you can do. Bargaining gets better the more you buy or the bigger the price of what you want. But it's something to have fun with.
That's a very, very interesting thing that you brought up, because I did want to ask you not only about etiquette from the people who may come up to your table, but also just the negotiations, which I'm obviously very curious about as well. And if you wanted to go a little bit more into it, that would be great. But just I would be wanting to know, for you specifically, obviously you can't talk for other dealers, but for you specifically, setting up at Burbank this weekend, are you open? As you said, you've got sticker prices on the cards in your showcase. Obviously, you mentioned, yes, there is a little bit of margin for wiggle room there, whether it's 5, 10%. But would you also have options for people who may have something that are willing to trade? Are you open to trade deals, or do you want to talk a little bit about that, just so the people who may come up to your table over the weekend at the Burbank Card Show can have just a little bit more information in mind to help you out as well to make it more efficient?
Sure. I'm kind of an unusual person in that there's not a lot that I'm looking for in UFC cards. Now, if someone wants to trade, for example, round 1 stuff or round 2 stuff, or some high-end one-of-ones, or if they've got some Leaf MMA cards that I'm missing in my collection, I'm definitely willing to listen. I'm willing to listen to everything. But it's tough for me, for example, if someone comes in and wants to offer me a GSP one-of-one, which are great, but I've got 28 one-of-ones from GSP. So I probably don't need another one. I'm more likely going to be selling one that I've got there. But definitely the idea for trading is, I see in a market at the shows, is there's a lot of young kids running around looking to trade, which is great. But typically the shows will have what's called a trade night. And so there's a separate 3 or 4 hours that are set up at a room in the convention center or in the hotel lobby, as the case is in Dallas. And people set up their own tables and set up the cards they want to trade. And people walk around with their cases of cards that they're looking to trade. And everyone is in that mode on trade night. And so I'll have to think about whether I do trade night. But if it's an individual transaction and there's an important card that someone wants that I've got, and the price just won't work out for them, but they offer me something in trade, I'll absolutely consider it. And I think most of the dealers absolutely consider that, because most of the dealers are out there, and if they're selling inventory, they need inventory to replace it, or else they're no longer going to be dealers. And you can go out and buy, or you can trade for it. But I'd encourage people to do the trade nights because that's they're very active. At least it is in Dallas. Obviously, I'll know better in Burbank, but it's certainly a possibility. A lot easier when you're dealing with I would say a partial trade in cash. And I would say that for UFC cards, probably not a ton of trading going on. It's a lot more in the basketball, baseball, football space is where you see a lot more trading. And also in trade nights, you might see some UFC trades happening.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And just to clarify, this may be a dumb question, but is trade night, is that specifically trade only, or of course there are people buying cards as well, maybe not
Sure.
specifically
Uh,
just trading or
I'll give you for what I've seen in Dallas for the two shows I've done in Dallas. They shut down all the normal rooms that these dealers are working in. Okay. And so there's no sales going on there. And dealers who want to set up for trade will either find a space in the lobby or the hallways of the hotel. It's a convention center, so there's a lot of open space leading to convention rooms. And so they'll set up a table, usually a small table. We're not talking about massive, so 3 to 5 foot table. And they'll put out all the cards that they've got interested to trade. And customers will walk around the area looking for stuff that they're looking to trade for. And I'm assuming there's probably some cash that also moves.
yeah.
It's not, no one's there to observe that it's being done right or wrong. It's just more of an open forum. And it could be people that have gone to the show go out and put a table themselves that are not dealers, but just looking to trade. Or it can be, say, young kids or youth that'll go sit on one of the couches and put on the floor, on the carpeted floor, what they're trying to trade. And it's great because, this is not a hobby that allows everyone to participate in the high-end cards. And so a lot of these young kids have low-end cards, but a lot of them have really nice cards and a lot of them have graded cards. And they're trading for, their heroes, and they're trading for the people they watch and they enjoy and their teams. So I haven't seen a ton of UFC being traded because I haven't been active in the trade nights. I'll have to see what happens in Burbank, but it's mostly people trading for card or multiple cards for single cards or vice versa. And I am sure there's some cash going on as well. But this is primarily people who want to trade with each other's, not necessarily the dealers going out and doing another sale from 7 to 10 o'clock during trade night after the regular day is done.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And as I said, I especially myself, am definitely very curious to participate in the whole trading experience. So I definitely need to get to a show here one time soon. So moving on, just more with the show, just because I'm so curious. Can you sort of explain to me how it will see when people walk up to your table at the Burbank Car Show? Because for most of us, we all know you as the high-end UFC card guy, but can you just sort of talk about a little bit of showcases, everything in a showcase, has everything got a sticker price? Will you also have boxes with maybe some cheaper raw base cards in there for people to flick through as well?
Sure. At least at Burbank, I will probably not have what you tend to see with other sports of the 50-cent cards, the dollar cards, the, buy 4 for $3 kind of stuff. I have done that in Dallas, and I'll probably do that in Dallas, but I'm going to be a little bit limited on space for the cards that I can bring with me. Just to give you kind of an idea, I'm going to have a 3,200 count monster box full of UFC cards. Now it's not going to be 3,200 cards because they're all going to have top loaders. So, but that's going to be full. Then I'm going to have an entire row of vintage baseball, just like that. Then I've got a case of graded cards with me in Mexico, probably 60 or 80 cards. Of the UFC cards that I'm going to bring, probably 50 or so will be one of ones. Never, I think, anyone has put together at a show more than a few one of one UFC cards. But I'm going to have 50, at least 50. I have 50 raw ones, and there's probably another 15 graded ones. And besides all that, I've got a PSA order that's being shipped to me to Burbank right now that's got 40 or so PSA graded cards, some gemmed. One of the ones I'm going to be happiest to see is a 2013 finest gold number to 88 Khabib. That right now there's one on eBay for a ridiculous price at $7,500. I'll take $7,300 every day. But of those cards, several of those are high-end cards. There's a auto superfractor of Mighty Mouse that gemmed. There's just a lot of great cards. Besides those, there's almost 200 graded vintage baseball cards that I'm going to have. That will completely fill up to the brim 5 showcases.
Yeah.
So I'm going to
like
have 5 showcases, and Luis is going to have a single showcase because he's just going to be the Thursday and Friday and not bringing a ton. But if he needs more space, he'll get more space. I mean, Luis, if you're listening, you got plenty of space, bud. So what I've got to do is fit all that in a backpack, in a carry-on, in a single piece of luggage, if I can do that, which I think I can. I would estimate before it's all over, I could have more or less 1,000 cards in front of people at 2 tables, for 3.5 days. So if you're a UFC fan, you're going to find something you like that I bring. I've tried to bring a wide variety of fighters. I'm going to just quickly take a look at a spreadsheet I've got, and talking roughly 400 raw cards. Let me see if I could run a number here because I hadn't done it yet. I've got a value on those raw cards of $230,000.
Oh, wow.
Asking price.
Yeah,
and there's a famous, if you've never been to a show, there's a famous concept called buying the table. Okay. That's where a single customer will come up and say, I want everything. So if someone wants to come up and buy my table, that's just raw cards.
I heard Jeff Wilson's looking for inventory for his new shop. So.
Well, if Jeff is there, I hope to meet him because he can instantly have a UFC corner in his shop with some of the best stuff that exists.
Yeah, you can give a 5% discount.
I'll give him a little bit of discount, but he's got to haul it off to Atlanta. I can't be there to deliver it to him. Maybe I will deliver it if he wants that much. So I don't think that's ever happened with a UFC seller to buy the table, but we'll see. Maybe there's somebody, maybe Sean O'Malley will come in.
Maybe.
And want to buy the table. Maybe Joe Rogan will stop by. I'm hoping, against hope, but I'm hoping that there's a chance that some of the UFC fighters might come by because the show is 298 is on Saturday. You never know who shows up at these shows, or if I haven't seen a list of people doing autographs at the show, but
well, I'm Australian, so
let's say I'm ready with some cards.
I'm Australian, so I'll give a call to my mate Volkanovski and see if I can get him down there to.
Awesome, that would be great. I'm sure he's going to take Ilya's soul with him on Saturday night.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to have a bargain bin solely because I really can't travel with another 300 or 400 $2 and $3 and $4 autos. I'll do that in Dallas. But just to give you an example, there's a buddy of mine in Dallas right now that has been receiving cards that I've purchased. And I even had him fly to where my sister lives in Florida to pick up other cards that she's been holding for me over the years that'll be at the show, because it was cheaper for a flight than it would be for the insurance on a package. In fact, I couldn't afford, I'd have to send 5 or 6 packages because the post office won't insure that much in a single package. And I just didn't want to take the risk of having a box like that of 85 or 90 cards being lost and never showing up. I had a good friend in the hobby lose an entire Beckett submission that he decided not to insure. and got robbed in process, and he was probably out $10,000 worth of cards. And so I don't want to ever have that experience of losing my cards. So he's actually going to be bringing those cards and be with me, I think, on Friday and Saturday, because he's probably bringing 400 or 500 cards with him to Burbank.
Yeah, no.
So it is going to be a massive presentation of UFC cards. In Dallas, I'll have the cheaper bins. A lot of the sellers do have those, but it just doesn't make sense right now for the space that I've got and for my travel restrictions.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And obviously, you haven't been able to do that too many times. It would be interesting, obviously, to come back in another year's time when you have done these other shows, these 4, 5, 6 more shows this year, and sort of you be able to be more experienced as a dealer and find out what's working for you at your table, whether you're selling, more bulk in the cheaper cards in the cheaper bins as opposed to what you are in the higher end stuff. It would be very interesting to sort of find out how that goes for you over the next year. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's very exciting to hear.
I'll be happy to get back with you and talk about the experience after the show is done, because I would love to see other UFC collectors go do these shows as well. But as we talked about before, a lot of collectors PC certain fighters, and they don't want to let those cards go. That's one issue. And the second is they may not have 500 UFC cards that they're willing to let go to go do a show. There's only, I think, a few of us that have these ultra large collections, or people who are dealers that have a very large amount of UFC that they buy and sell. With me, it's stuff that I PC'd for more than 10 years without ever selling very much at all. But now I'm very happy to sell some stuff, because also over time I realized I was being a little bit of a hoarder. You've got 500,000 cards, you're a hoarder. Maybe if you have 10,000 cards, you're a hoarder. But I was holding on to a lot of cards that a lot of people wanted, that it made as much sense to share them, let's say, with other collectors than to just keep them, under lock and key in my house. And so that's a lesson I learned when I had kids, is that I tell them all the time, because I got twin boys that are now 5 years old, and they still don't understand the term share. And so I try to teach them the concept of sharing. And then I realized I wasn't doing much of it myself when I had this many cards that I was not letting the public get access to them. So that's a little bit about why I'm doing it as well.
Yeah, I could only imagine the collection that they'll be walking into later in life. But yeah, it's a great point that you mentioned about getting more UFC dealers out there eventually. But I could only imagine what would be needed before that would be to have more people coming in to the show, more customers to the show coming in and looking for UFC. I think the more foot traffic that UFC can get when coming into shows, that will obviously lead to a higher demand, and then that demand will then be filled by more dealers dealing in UFC, and then more specific UFC dealers at shows as well, which is something that I think we all look forward to. The other thing, last thing I wanted to ask you about before we get on to the end of this episode is, you are known, at least in the Facebook, on the Instagram, as the high end, or one of the high end, should I say, UFC card collectors. So I'm just very curious. It must be very tough for you, especially now deciding to set up at shows and beginning that new journey for your collecting side and where you are at the hobby right now. How is it that you go about pricing out, putting these sticker prices on these cards that you have in your cases to sell? Because I could only imagine a lot of the cards that you have in your case are very unique, are very rare to find, and it must make that then very difficult for you to price out those cards. So if you could
Sure, good question.
Talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Sure. Probably for about 75% of the cards that I'll be displaying, I spent, I don't know, it took me a couple days completely, or over a period of a week, 2 full days, dedicated to looking up recent sales prices on 130point.com and eBay sold cards, and looking at eBay for sale cards. Because in a lot of cases, even some of what I'll call normal cards that I've got may not have had a lot of sales recently, or may not be a lot available for sale. Okay. So about 75% is my guess that I used clear raw data to come up with a number. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that if the last card that sold for $250 and I've got one, I'm going to price it at $250. Imagine it's a Ruby auto of somebody that might be in demand. If it's had two sold in the last year, those two have gone into PCs, and that means there's more rarity to the one Ruby that I've got. So I may price it 20% higher. And if I have a question, because another thing I will tell you about most buyers is most buyers are very informed about recent prices. We'll know how to go find on 130. We'll search eBay. There's other apps that they use that I think are more active in, let's say, in other sports, but you'll see people tracking UFC transactions, and they will come up and see what you got, and they'll pull out their smartphone and immediately start checking the prices and say, well, the last one that sold at X, and you got yours for Y. I'll offer you Z. And so that's when the negotiation starts. And the negotiation can change if they're looking for a single card. If it's a single card, let's say under $100 or under $50 or under $500, or if it's a $2,000 card, negotiations can go different ways. If it ends up being a big card that, I'll give you a perfect example. I was writing up my one-of-ones of GSP that I'm bringing with me, and I've got a 2012 knockout one-of-one on-card auto, and I've got a 2014 knockout one-of-one on-card auto, and a 2015 knockout one-of-one that may be a sticker auto. Obviously, not obviously, but I'm pretty sure I hit some of those, or I bought it back in the day. And so there are no transactions you can look at. So coming up with pricing is not a perfect art. What I try to do is look at recent sales of 101 autos, non-rookies, but it's got to be someone who's like a GOAT, because it's GSP, or if it's Anderson Silva, or if it's a Conor McGregor. You've got to look for the highest end sales that have happened in UFC. So one thing I will do is go to 130 and type in UFC auto and look at the top 50 sales, to see where the highest of highs have come. The problem with that is almost all of those are going to be Panini sales. And not all of those can be super trusted, because even if it appears to be closed in a 130 point post, it may have been canceled. So you have to be careful a little bit with that. And the other thing that goes into it is a little bit about, what I believe in my heart I need in funds to let go of something that was important to me, or that is important to me, or that in 10 years might be worth double or triple. So everyone does that, investments, or with, if they're going to make an addition to their house, or if they're going to buy a car, if they're looking for something that's going to lose value or something that's going to increase in value. For example, I'm going to have a graded St. Pierre red ink rookie card with me. I think there's one that sold on eBay for around $10,000, but it wasn't in good condition. Mine's in better condition. So I'm not going to sell mine for $10,000. I'm going to ask $17,500, and maybe someone's going to say, I'll pay it, because they believe in 4 years or 5 years, it's a $30,000 card. Who knows? None of us really know. All of us kind of expect that things will grow in the UFC market, but a lot of what goes into it is looking at past transactions. But if there is no past similar transaction, or if it's a one-of-one card, or you just can't come to any reasonable support for it, you put up what you think you need to walk away, feel happy that you've lost a piece of cardboard that you can't give to your kids when you're gone, but that money is going to go pay for their, birthday party, or it's okay. So I've got the Joe Rogan one-of-one auto. No one else has got another to buy that card for me. But that's just it. If I don't get it, I'll walk away and I'll put it back in my safe at home.
Yeah.
I won't take it personal that no one wants to pay my asking price. And if people want to negotiate on my prices, that's fine. I have no problem negotiating to what I think is something that's appropriate for both sides. You know,
Yeah.
we don't have tons of millionaire collectors of UFC cards. Virtually every other sport does. I don't know if you saw it, but there was a post on Instagram that had an interview with Pat Mahomes a couple days ago, and he was being asked about cards. He collects some of his own cards, but there's a $4 million card of his, and he says, I can't afford that. I'm not going to go buy that. I'd like to have some of my nice cards, but I'm not going to go buy that. Well, he probably has a $12 million house, but he's not going to put $4 million in the cardboard, but somebody has. So maybe somebody will walk up, you know, maybe Dana White will walk up with stupid money and buy the table and become, you know, the best UFC card collector in the world.
Yeah, we can only hope something like that happens. You made a great
Yeah,
point.
that's right. At least my wife hopes that.
Yeah. You made a great point. Just we're going back to when pricing out your cards and just the tendency that people have to, as you said, pull out their phone, take out eBay sold listings, take out 130 point, take out card ladder, take out market movers, whatever it is that they're using, and just they're seeing the sold comp, as they like to call it. But I think that is only applicable depending on certain factors of the card. If you got, as you mentioned, you got a Ruby card that's relatively low serial numbered, and there's 2 sold listings in the last 2 years maybe, and people want to talk about that price and talk about that price in terms of how the market was as well, and they're generally going to offer you lower than what
Right.
that sold listing. But as you mentioned, it's a great point that all that means is 2 less that are 2 less available now. So you'd almost price that down to now, well, now this is an out of 6 card because those 2 have sold.
That's right.
As you said, more than likely gone to somebody who wanted that card, a collector who's going to keep that card. So now the card is less limited, and therefore I agree with you 100%. It should be you can higher the price. You know, you're not going to go double or triple it, but you certainly
Right.
could. You're certainly within your own means to be pricing that card higher than what the sold listing is, just based off the fact that, as you said, whether it's lower serial numbered, whether the card is already low serial numbered, and you can clearly see that it's in better condition, the copy that you are selling. That they're all things that need to be
That's right.
taken into consideration instead of just, okay, well, this one sold for this price on this date. Yeah, no, I'm very glad you brought that up because that's something that I'm not even a dealer or somebody who is going to shows, but I strongly agree with you about that because it's something that I've given thought to before. Comps are only relevant when it's a higher volume card, for example, a more common card.
Exactly. And the part about comps, I think that a lot of people don't think about is unless you can go back to a lot of really serious details about a past sale, you never know about the exact condition of a card that was sold, unless it's a graded card. Now, if someone buys a Ruby graded card that's a PSA 9, and I'm selling a Ruby card that's a PSA 9, we're talking about exact equivalence.
Yeah.
But if one was sold raw and I've got a PSA, or it's in reverse, or one that was sold raw that was beat up, of course it's sold cheap because it wasn't in great conditions. So not every comp is going to be comparable.
Yeah. No, 100% agreed. Just, obviously, once again, I know this is the second time we've done this. I am very, very appreciative of your time. As you said, you got a very busy week coming up. I will have this coming out for the people just leading into the show. Just to end this episode off, is there anything that you wanted to tell the people about? I know you mentioned about last time about potentially looking into getting a website up and started for us, people in the UFC car community. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that? I know it's a little bit behind schedule at the moment, but you want to talk a little bit about that and anything else you want to finish off the episode with?
Sure. Well, first thing to say, thanks for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to people. Second, about the Burbank show, one thing I did not mention and I should have, obviously, if you see this or you know me on Instagram and you go to the show, please come by and say hello. It's booth 716 and 717. I would love to meet people that I've interacted with online. In the case of, pardon me, in the case of Luis, I've known him for close to 15 years and never met him. I consider him like a friend, but we've never physically seen each other nor spoken.
Oh,
When I
wow.
see him, I'm not so sure I'm going to recognize him because, pardon me, the way the community works is we talk to each other online, we talk to each other through Messenger, maybe emails. I've not met most people. I've got a ton of friends that I consider in the hobby that I've never even met. And so I'm looking forward to meet him. And I'm looking forward to meet a lot of people who have said that they're going to go. And so if you see this and you go, please stop by and say, hello, even if you're not looking to buy. Let me know who your real name is and who your fake IG name is. And if you've got a strange Facebook name, because I can't keep up with everybody's nicknames and IG names, etc. So going back to your question about the website, it's not ready. It exists, but it's not ready. I've got to dedicate more time to it. I'll have some more time this year to do that. Plus, some people may have seen a recent post I had on IG where AJ McCool, who is Husky Tabby on IG, he and I put together it wasn't brief because it had to be put into separate sections in IG because of the limited number of characters. We put in a little guide on looking at pricing and kind of what to collect. And it's obviously just somebody's opinion. And since you didn't pay for it, it's only worth nothing. It's only worth what you think it's worth. But he and I have thought about putting together a theory next year. And a lot of collectors have gotten into UFC less than 5 years that don't know a lot about the first products of the UFC. And so we're going to do a little bit of get to know each product from 2009 forward. So a couple guys that are long-term collectors get questions from people who are just seeing some fighters and starting to collect and wondering what they should start buying or opening or which is the best product, and don't realize that some of their PC fighters have had cards for more than 10 years. And I think the biggest thing we try to do is caution collectors, new collectors, if they want to buy Chuck Liddell, Anderson Silva, if they want to buy GSP, if they're looking to buy Matt Hughes, to buy guys fighting, let's say before 2015, figure out where their rookie stuff came from. And there's a guy named Henry Ruiz who has a website, I think, called MMA Rookies that has tracked the first autos and the first cards of fighters beginning. And, the only reason we want that is because if someone thinks that they're investing in a fighter, but buying the most recent Panini stuff of it's been around for 10 years, it may not be a good investment. If it makes them happy, you should do it. If they love the look of Panini, the look of 2019 Chrome, instead of buying 2009 round 2, more power to you. One of the early collect hobby is an OG told me, buy what you want, as long as you expect it to be 0 when you go to sell it. Be happy with what you have, but don't expect a return and expect to lose everything that you put in. And if you can still do that, you'll be a happy collector.
Yeah, no, I think once you do get the website up and running, I think it'll be such a benefit for UFC collectors because, as you said, it gets very muddy sometimes when people who have come in over the recent few years and are only familiar with Panini, for example, they weren't too aware of the older top stuff. And now we're going back to tops. So it's going to get a little bit muddy there for people who come in over the next few years because we're going to have a new era of tops, Panini, and then an older era of tops. So I think obviously the sooner you can get the website out, it's going to be such a great benefit for new collectors. So very much looking forward to that and can't wait for that news to come out. So very, very, very appreciative of your time. Obviously, we've had a little bit of problems at the back end here with the connection, but that happens sometimes. This was such great information. Wishing you all the best for the upcoming Burbank show. I know you're going to get connected with other people, especially in the content space. I know Joe from Joe's Card Stash is looking forward to getting together with you too during the weekend. And then definitely, yeah, hope, as you said, if people want to come up to you, they can be more than welcome to say hello and let you know who they are. And Yeah, once again, Eric, very much appreciated, mate. And I can't wait to have you back here on again in the future to hear about everything, how it's been going, setting up as a UFC card dealer.
Thanks so much, man. Take care, and I'll be getting back with you after the show.